Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over the upcoming La Niña pattern that we're going to be dealing with over the fall and winter months. We'll be going over some of the model guidance in today's video. This is part 2 of our multi-video series where we're going to be talking about the fall and winter months. Yesterday we talked mostly about what a La Niña is, and we also looked at some of the model guidance for the sea surface temperatures around the eastern Pacific, which does have an impact on the winter months. But today we're going to look at more models, kind of like the CFS model, which is a longer range model. It's going to kind of show you what that model is expecting for this upcoming winter. So that's what we're going to be looking at more in today's video, and then I probably will have a part 3 and maybe even a part 4 where we're going to be talking about the NAO, the AO, PNA, EPO, all of that in the next couple of videos. So we have a ton of new content. Make sure you are staying around all the way until the end, and also make sure that you have your notifications turned on so you don't miss another video. So here's a look at the current sea surface temperatures out in the eastern Pacific. So this is the area that we typically look at for the La Niña, and you can see that right now we definitely have those La Niña conditions, or at least below normal temperatures within the eastern Pacific. So you can already see the signs of a La Niña forming, definitely right there, and most models agree that we're either going to a La Niña or maybe a ENSO neutral, which is tilting a bit colder than normal. So either way, you're looking at somewhere between 0.3 and about 1 degree below normal Celsius. So either way, it's going to be fairly close to similar. It doesn't really matter if it's technically an ENSO neutral or technically a La Niña. Again, the definitions of it's not going to really make a difference in the long-term of things. You're going to really want to look at some other things like the AO, NAO, PNA. That's what we're going to talk about in tomorrow's video. But again, today we're looking at model guidance, because that is one of the factors that you have to look at. It's definitely nothing that you want to base your entire forecast off of, because models are wrong quite a bit, but definitely something that you want to look at least. If we look at the records for the past few months in terms of the La Niña, El Nino, ENSO neutral situation, you can see that we were in a La Niña pretty much for 10 months or even closer to a full year. Going from late last year into the first half of this year, and then somewhere around June and July we dipped down into ENSO neutral territory. Now we're still at 0.4 degrees below normal, so we're right along the borderline between La Niña and ENSO neutral criteria. If you don't know, a La Niña is sea surface temperatures that are half a degree below normal or less. And then an ENSO neutral would be between half a degree and minus half a degree below normal. So that's how that would work. We'll see if we do deepen into a La Niña. Usually that you see that during the winter months, it kind of strengthens. So you can see that even going back all the way to 2009, these summer months were typically the more moderate in terms of the ENSO pattern. We had, except for pretty much 2015, that's really the only outlier I see, maybe 2010 as well, but for the most part, we were in a El Nino or a La Nina. Maybe some of that carries over into the summer months, but it really is going to weaken. It's going to come closer to normal. You're probably going to be in an ENSO neutral for most summer months. And then, as you get into the winter, so once we look at the right-hand side of your screen, which is right over here, you can see that that's when you start to figure out whether you're going to be in a La Niña or an El Nino, and in pretty much all except for 3 of the past 12 years, we've been in either a La Niña or a El Nino, and we do have, of course, the outside chance that we get into an ENSO neutral. But if you look at the trend, there's very few years where you kind of stay at whatever it is, 0.2, minus 0.3, whatever that number is, and it's very rare that you'll just stay there. So I would think that you're probably going back into a La Niña. That's just my prediction, but of course, ENSO neutral, not out of the question. A El Nino is definitely not likely as of right now. So here's what a La Nina is, just to kind of review from yesterday. Usually colder temperatures into the northwest and the northern plains. The Great Lakes and the Northeast become more of a toss-up, and the southern United States becomes warmer and drier most times with more precipitation if you live along the Pacific Northwest. So if we look at the forecast for the next few months, you can see that we're expecting that La Nina to deepen a little bit. And then, of course, you go into the summer months, spring months, and you'll start to go back into a neutral pattern. But we do have, again, about a 30%, 40% chance that we're in an ENSO neutral. So, again, it's not out of the question completely. Definitely, it is still a possibility. Here's a look at the model predictions. You can see these ones also showing that we're likely going down into a La Nina, or at least most of them show that. And you can also see that the mean line, so the average, is right around 3/4 of a degree below normal. So looking at the chances numerically for seeing a La Nina or an ENSO neutral by a 3-month time frame. So for example, this is how you'd read it. SON would stand for September, October, November. OND would stand for October, November, December. So that's kind of how you would read that. So it's the average over that 3-month span. What we really want to look at is from November all the way until March. So basically this time frame right here. And you can see that what we have is a fairly high chance of a La Nina for November through January. And then February, March, April, it looks like it will probably go back into an ENSO neutral. That's when these numbers in the ENSO neutral column start to go up a little bit more. And that's where we start to have the threat of going back into an ENSO neutral. So we could be dealing with a kind of two different winters, where one half of the winter we're in a La Nina, and then the other half we're in a neutral. And who knows, maybe come by the summertime we're in an El Nino, because it looks like those numbers on the bottom are actually starting to rise a little bit more. So we'll have to see for this winter. Either a La Nina or a neutral is expected. And if we look at NOAA's temperature forecast, which I will give a disclaimer, even though it's showing above normal temperatures, if you were to look at the past, 5 or 6 years, it looks pretty much exactly the same. They barely change this year on year because they don't want to be incorrect, so they just put the warmest possible. Usually if you say it's a warm winter, a lot less people will complain than if you say it's a snowy and cold winter and you're wrong. So if you're wrong and it ends up being a colder winter, you're going to have less people complaining than if you were forecasting a colder winter and it ended up being mild and warm the entire time. So they kind of want to hedge their bets and not really put anything too out there and just put equal chances or above normal. That's usually what they do. I don't really look at their forecasts all that much because it really does not provide all that much information, especially the past few years. They've barely been putting really any thought into this. It's been pretty much a copy paste from the past couple years. Here's a look at the model guidance. So this is what the video is going to be mostly centered around. You can see that we do have, this is the climate forecasting system, so the CFS model, which does have a warm bias, but when you look at the 500 millibar map, it does remove some of the warm bias which you'll have on the surface. So if you were to look at the 2-meter temperature anomalies for the United States, you would see that we were having probably above normal temperatures along the entire country, and we know that probably that is not going to be the case. Usually, if you're going to have warmer temperatures, it's going to be on one half of the country. So you could have colder temperatures into the west, where you have that trough, and then you have a ridge popping up into the east, or you could have the exact opposite, where you have a ridge into the west or a trough into the east. Very rarely are you going to see just kind of one temperature pattern over the entire continental United States, because remember, it's a 3,000-mile wide country, so and including Canada and Mexico as well. Both of those areas, very rare that the entire country of Canada or Mexico or the United States is going to be undergoing the same temperature pattern where we're all in a milder or a warmer pattern. It is possible, but I don't think it's likely, and it very rarely happens where the entire country is colder than normal or the entire country is warmer than normal. You want to pay attention to this blue line or this purple line right here. This is that 540 freezing line. So the further that dips down, that means the pretty much the extent of that cold air. Now, of course, I would pretty much look at that 552 line as where you're probably going to be dealing with decently cold temperatures, where you could be dealing with most of your winter weather by that point. So 552 line, it would show mostly the northern plains, Great Lakes, Northeast, Ohio Valley as well, getting in on the snowfall. This would be for December. If we look at this for January, you can see that line dips further to the south. So now we're dealing with probably parts of the northern plains, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, now also the Tennessee Valley in play, Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast, still looking at the possibility of being somewhat colder, and also dealing with some amount of snow as well. We have this little area of low pressure into eastern Canada, and this is going to be a big factor. One thing that we're going to have to pay attention to is that ridge off of Alaska, and then also what resulting trough forms because of this ridge into Alaska. So the bigger the ridge, the more amplified that typically would mean, the bigger the dip down. So, for example, if you have a really, really big ridge that goes all the way to northern Alaska, well, now you're going to have an equal size drop right in the middle. So, where does that ridge set up? Does it maybe set up a little bit further to the east, and then you have that cold air dip into the eastern United States? Maybe it sets up further to the west into the Aleutian Islands, and now you have a jet stream into the western United States. Again, this is the big questions that we have to ask, because one way or the other, that's going to be a completely different winter if that ridge sets up maybe 500 miles to the west or 500 miles to the east. Completely different winter just based on that one thing. And we're going to talk about the Alaskan ridge more in the next couple of videos, talking about the PNA, the NAO, the oscillations there, because that'll cover more on the Pacific and what happens there with all the oscillations. This would be for February, and you can see I think February is probably going to be one of the colder months compared to what we're dealing with in December and January. December, I think, will be more of an all over the place month, where you kind of have storms going in and out. It's not necessarily cold, but you are dealing with 1 or 2 days out of the month where you get one storm to kind of just jump down into parts of the United States and bring a little bit of snowfall unexpectedly, and then maybe you go back into a bit of a milder pattern. December is going to be kind of all over the place, in my opinion, and then January, it'll probably start to stabilize. Further to the north, that's where the colder temperatures are going to be, and then above normal temperatures for the middle and southern part of the country. So I think that will probably be one of the milder months. And then February, we could probably reinvigorate some of the colder air from up in northern Canada, and that'll probably squeeze down into the United States every once in a while, and we could see some more snow events as a result of that. So the general shape here would be a trough into the eastern and central United States with a little bit of ridging out further to the west. But we'll have to see whether that actually pans out. And that is going to wrap it up for today's video. We're going to have a ton of information in tomorrow's video talking about all the oscillations. So again, the PNA, the NAO, the AO, the EPO, all of those we're going to be talking about. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest determining factors. Not really the La Niña, not the ENSO neutral, not some of these climate forecast models, but what happens in the short and medium range with the oscillations, whether we have a positive PNA, all of that will be hugely important into what actually happens with the snow and the cold this winter. So if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. I'll be responding within a few hours of you posting that. And again, if you just have any comments, questions, concerns, leave them down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.